I'm Rob. I'm going to be chair, host and all that kind of silly MC stuff for the evening. Usual house rules first. There are no fire alarms planned for this evening, so if you hear a fire alarm, please make the way in an orderly fashion down the stairs out the door. So this evening we have a kind of packed plan of activities. We've obviously got Bob and we've got Edward and Yuri going to come up later. But before we go there, we've invited Craig Steele along from Coder Dojo Scotland. Craig is the leader of Coder Dojo in Scotland, and I don't know many of you know what Coder Dojo actually is. I'm going to leave all that to Craig. He's going to explain everything about what they do. But I'm going to put in a little personal anecdote. So I'm a dad, and I'm a dad of a son of 15. And I think I'm looking at all the blokes here, you can remember what it was like to be 15. Occasionally I hesitate, but I do chap on my son's room door and poke my head in and ask what he's doing. Now a year ago, when I chapped on my son's room door and poked the head in and asked what he was doing, the answer was simple: I'm playing COD, Dad, beat it. And for those that don't know, COD is Call of Duty, he's on the Xbox. Last week I chapped my son's room door to ask what he was doing, same kind of knock, same kind of question, and the response was, shush Dad, I'm learning Java. Ladies and gentlemen, Craig Steele.
Thank you. So good evening, my name's Craig. I'm a computer scientist, gadget geek and interested in all things tech. I'm also the leader of Coder Dojo in Scotland. So Scotland is facing a challenge over the next decade because the latest figures reveal that there's about 13,000 digital job vacancies every year in Scotland, and only half of those vacancies have been filled. So there are more jobs than ever in this area, and there's this digital skills gap that's going to be a real issue over the next 10 years. Nationally, we now have 17% of schools with no computing specialist. So that's 62 secondary schools across the country without a subject specialist to deliver computing experiences and outcomes for the subject, or to deliver the certificate level qualifications. Now this talk isn't meant to be a dig at formal education, but we can't rely on the formal education system alone to fill that digital skills gap. So what are we actually doing about it? What are we doing in Scotland to take on this challenge? So Coder Dojo is a national network of free computer coding clubs for young people. So our clubs are run by volunteers from technology backgrounds who are keen to share their skills. In our clubs, young people learn to build apps, design games, make things with wearable technology, or play around with the latest cutting-edge tech. But the idea is it makes learning to code and develop these digital skills a fun and sociable experience. So I started the first club in Glasgow about 5 years ago, and at that time there was clubs out there. If you were a young person who was interested in dance or football or something like that, there was a place that you could go to do that type of thing. But there wasn't a club where young people who had that shared interest in technology could come and meet their peers. And for many of the young people at our clubs, they don't necessarily have friends who have that same level of interest in tech like they do. So being part of something like a Coder Dojo club is a great experience for them, because Coder Dojo is just as much a social experience as it is an educational experience. We started the first club in July 2012 in the Science Centre in Glasgow, and it's grown right across the country. We've grown even more in the past year, so we're now at the stage where we've got 30 clubs right across Scotland. So we've got lots in Glasgow, Edinburgh, Inverness, Dundee, Islay, Renfrewshire, I can't even remember where they all are now, but we've got about 30 clubs in total. So these are our latest figures. We've got a great geographic reach, and we're working with dozens of volunteers and around about between 400 and 500 young people each month. The Coder Dojos here in Edinburgh are some of the most popular in the country. So Matt and Amandine and Frida and their team of volunteers have done a fantastic job establishing this brilliant opportunity for local young people. And this is the sort of mission. How do we support that next generation of Scottish digital makers? So people who are not just consumers of technology but have the skills that they can make it as well. So we need to find different ways that we can reach a different demographic of young people. So many of the young people who come to Coder Dojo just now are people who are already interested in STEM. So they're fortunate enough to come from families who can support them who can do things like providing them the equipment, who can actually take them along to the clubs. But we need to make sure that we can attract and support young people who wouldn't normally try and attend this type of event. So last year our goal was to try and establish 2 coder dojos in areas of multiple deprivation. So we achieved that goal. In fact, we opened up 5 clubs in 8 those areas. And from those new clubs that were set up, 57% of the young people attending those clubs were from areas of of high deprivation. And while this hasn't been without its challenges, we're reaching a more diverse group of young people than ever before. We've also been looking at how do we tackle the gender imbalance in our Coder Dojo, and we've been working with our various clubs to try and improve that. It's been interesting, and we've just published a report last month in a toolkit that talks a bit about more how we did it. When we started Coder Dojo 5 years ago, we had about 18% girls. We're now at the stage where we've got around 30% on average across our clubs. But that isn't reflective of each club. There's some clubs where we have many more girls, and there's actually some clubs as well where there are none at the moment. We also want to celebrate the success of our young people. So this year we had 8 young people from our clubs attend the Coolest Projects Awards in Dublin. So this was a chance for the young people to meet other young people like them who shared that interest and showcased their projects. And Team Scotland were winners that day too. So Lucas and Michael were runners up in their category after making a fantastic project that combined hardware and software to make a fun game. And we were fortunate that NBN offered sponsorship that allowed us to contribute towards their travel costs that allowed them to attend that event. So why I'm here tonight is I want to help you support a Coder Dojo, and the key to that is our volunteers. So the key to making any Coder Dojo a success is our team of mentors and volunteers. At a Coder Dojo, the learning is led by the young people. There's no set curriculum. We encourage our mentors to sort of share their knowledge in an area that they care about, but really it's up to what is it the young people want to research and find out about. But Coder Dojo is a great learning experience for our volunteers as well as the young people. I know whenever I go to a Coder Dojo, I always learn something new as well. And our mentors also enjoy networking with other people from the tech community. So what can you actually do to support what we are doing? Well, we don't want hardware to necessarily be a barrier to entry. It shouldn't be that you need to have a laptop to come along and be part of a Coder Dojo. So if you have access to old equipment, maybe you work for a company that are refreshing their stuff, maybe you might consider donating some of your hardware or software to us to use at a dojo. In the Edinburgh dojos recently, we recently had the donation of old mobile phones that the young people are able to use to test some of their apps on as well. Another thing you might do is you might create and share resources for us to use in our dojo. So we have a GitHub page where we put our resources for using in the dojo. We have what's called a kata page, which is like a wiki where you can create and share resources. So maybe you don't have the time to come along to a club yourself, but you want to share some of your skills. Putting something on that could be really useful. There's a web development agency in Glasgow called Papertank who built us a time machine, which sounds pretty cool. So what it was a command line app that used the Wayback Engine, which is an online tool that lets you see into websites in the past. So the young people could build their own time machine app and see what a website would have looked like 10 or 15 years ago.
Kind of like our clock on that wall.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be borrowing that for the next dojo. Or you could come along and actually volunteer at one of our dojos itself. So we're always looking for volunteers. What's the time commitment? Well, generally about once a month, and it's about 90 minutes long. Most of the volunteers find that if you've got a lot of people volunteering at your dojo, it makes it easier and it makes it more fun for the young people. And the feedback from the young people who attend the Coder Dojo and their parents is very telling. So when we ask them, what is it you like about coming to a Coder Dojo? Well, yes, they like getting to play about with the tech. Yes, they like learning these digital skills. But they're most thankful for the support of the volunteers, being able to chat to other people who have that shared interest as them, because you might be chatting to them about something that actually they don't have anyone else that they could geek out at over that. And I'm here because I know that the dojos, particularly in Edinburgh, they are seeking new volunteers. They've got some already, but they need more. And in fact, in a city like Edinburgh, where it's already full of enthusiastic people who are talented, we're certainly not lacking in people who could potentially get involved. So Coder Dojo Scotland isn't set up as a charity. So we don't accept cash donations. Most things to us are given as in-kind donations. But Michael and NBN Solutions, they put together some sponsorship money that they put aside for us, and that we can use it to buy things that actually help all our clubs. So things like paying for our website, paying for our domain, and little small marketing things like flyers and posters. So if you'd like to personally contribute to that pot, you can tonight. And you need to know that that sponsorship pot is being managed and held by NBN. It's not by us. Cheers. So to bridge that digital skills gap, we need to challenge what people think about computing and technology. We need to show that computer coding isn't just for techies, but can be for everyone. So I invite you to talk to me later tonight about ways that you can get involved that help us support that next generation of digital makers.
Right, so listen, seriously, from a parental perspective, this has made a massive difference to my son's life. I've seen him growing in confidence through being part of the dojo movement, through learning to articulate what he feels is important, and his wee techie dream that I can't help him with. I'm not a techie, I'm the least techie guy in this room. But these guys are helping, and they do a really, really good, beneficial job. And they're not like big bullish salespeople like I am, so they don't say this kind of thing, but I would very much appreciate if you could donate anything possible that you can afford into this bucket, which eventually will make its way via Michael to the guys at Coder Dojo. These guys are doing fantastic work with young people, and they're helping to build a sustainable ecosystem of digital and data equipped people for the next generation to come. So if you can, please donate when you're leaving the room. So with that in mind, it's time to move on to our next speaker. Over to you, Bob.
Okay. Take a moment to get set up here.
I'll take a moment to sup on my beer.
Yeah, I knew you would. By the way, he's being very modest. His son was one of the two lads who won in that competition in Ireland, so that's fantastic. Where? Yep. So I had an inspiration listening to Craig's talk. Where's Susan here? Is she hiding? Ah, there she is. I think we ought to sponsor an under 17 blockchain crowd. We could call them the minor miners. Anyway. All right. So, a couple of things first. Obviously, I'm humbled to be here, particularly given the last couple of meetups that I've been to, which in order have been Susan Ramanat talking about the historical implications of blockchain and where it fits in the major sweep of history. And then last week, Bill Buchanan at Napier University, kind of talking about cyber and crypto in a current state and into the future view. They've kind of covered all of time, which even with this clock I can't do. So I'm encouraged by that, but really humbled and a little bit terrified to be up here trying to follow those two. But one thing we learned from Bill last week was that Bill is a man of enormous integrity and honor. And even though his new book on cryptography had just been published, he refused to push the book at the event last week. He refused to say anything about it. In fact, he refused to even tell you where you could buy it and how much it would cost. So I'm really inspired by that, and I want you to know that at Spiritus, we're not going to do that either. I just think it's important to stick with our principles. All right, let's get started. So, if I think about the arc of a career here, it has truly been a long, strange trip. I've been in the IT business since 1985. It's a long time, with a collection of acronym companies, EDS, KPMG, IBM, CSC. I've got the whole alphabet soup here. But when I look at what I would consider a career cloud, Here's a lot of the things that I've dealt with over the years, but you'll see the most prominent word up there is data. I've been a data geek for 32
They're not looking at pie.
Take the beer on. I've been a data geek my whole career. My CTO at CSC called me Mr. All Things Data at CSC. It's all I've ever done. And it's been a fascinating career. I've seen a lot of things come and go. I've seen a tremendous evolution across the board in everything that has to do with data. So I thought I would talk to you about some of that tonight. Just kind of walk through some of the things that I've seen, some of the evolutions I've seen, some of where it looks like things are going, and particularly talk about some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. And I can see there's a good mix of young and less young people here tonight. So, you know, there's a lot of people, this won't be anything new. Some people have already heard my story, a lot of this story. I see a lot of familiar faces in the room, that's fantastic. So let's just take a trip down memory lane together here. What I'll first do is kind of talk through a number of collections, if you will, some collections of topics that I've run across in my years that have to do with data. And these are around databases and integration and data analysis and where we get the data from and the kind of skills we need to work in data. And the evolution has been striking over the years. In the database world, I started out working with ISAM files and then Kix VSAM under IMS DBDC, hierarchical databases. I was one of the first people at IMS in 1985 to be trained in the brand new IBM DB2 database, which was a humbling experience but fascinating to get me into the relational database world. From there, moved on to Oracle. Teradata came along and really revolutionized how we thought about what we could do with data at scale and what we could do with data analysis and BI. This was in the early days of data warehousing and business intelligence. Teradata showed us a lot about what we could do with technology to parallelize things and really perform at high scale. But even that's been overtaken. In-memory databases like HANA and others have proven that we can use available technology to dramatically accelerate what we do with databases. The move into big data and Hadoop and all of the other NoSQL databases that are out now, Cassandra and whatnot, have really changed the world of data and really changed the way we look at data. It's for 20 years, the world was a relational data world. And all of that's been turned on its head now. So, you see things like the graph databases like Neo4j. There are graph machines that are exclusively for processing data graphs, which the internet has taught us to do. We needed to do that to be able to manage the volumes of data and the kinds of relationships we saw in data on the internet. Some additional, developments like the distributed document databases like Mongo and many others, which we're now putting under a number of what a year or two ago I wouldn't have thought were applications we would put them under, but the way we can use these databases has changed so much that we're now being able to do things with them we never thought we would. One of the latest developments, if any of you were at Scott Chain 16 last year, you heard from Bruce Pond, the founder of Big Chain DB, in which is a project that they took a distributed NoSQL database and put blockchain characteristics into it rather than trying to turn blockchain into a database, which I thought was so simple that obviously everybody missed it except them. So an incredible concept, an incredible project they're on. They're also working on open sourcing that to create something they're calling IPDB, the Interplanetary Database, to kind of be a companion project to IPFS. So really exciting work happening in Berlin. Good friends of ours at Spiritus, and we wish them a lot of luck. In the data integration space, which is really the guts and plumbing of a lot of data work that we've done forever, I started out as most did in custom coded data integration. We would write scripts and COBOL code to move data and combine data and harmonize data. One of the earliest ETL tools in the world was a tool called SyncSort that A lot of the older folks in the room will remember, folks who've worked in mainframes and whatnot will remember SyncSort. That started out pretty much as a tool to sort data, which did it at a much higher performance than the databases themselves could. But at the same time, you could do things with SyncSort even back in the day that were ETL characteristics. You could change fields, you could select fields. Fascinating what they've become. But then they were completely overtaken by the wave of the ETL tools, Informatica, Ardent, Essential, IBM DataStage. Some of these tools really revolutionized the way that we do this because we could use a graphical method to combine data and massage it and improve the quality and do whatever we needed to with it. Made an enormous difference in the way that we did BI and data warehousing in particular. And then following on from that, there were other tools. There was a brief wave, 3 or 4 years, of data virtualization, where that was the next thing. And Composite was one of the big tool sets that would allow you to leave data centrally and then position cache data at edge points so that people who wanted to see it could very quickly get to data they used frequently, and you could also get to it through this virtualization engine. I'll talk about one of the clients I did that with a little bit later here, but fascinating technology, complemented by Golden Gate, which was a change data capture technology, allowed us to then selectively pick fields that had changed in a database and persist those to an edge server in real time. Fascinating concept, fell flat on its face. Golden Gate was sold to Oracle, that was the end of that, and other things took over from Composite, but there's still a lot of value to that. Some more recent developments, the agile data integration space, characterized by tools like LavaStorm and Endeca and Ativio. The open source space has seen Pentaho come in here and be very successful. And now in the big data space, we've got Talend and Flume. So it's still a very rich space. There's still a lot going on there. It will continue to evolve. In terms of how we get the data out, how we present it to the clients, of course, there's a theme here tonight. I started out handwriting all of this and started out working with teams like EasyTree and ReportWriter, and I'll bet there aren't many people here who started with those tools. They were really clunky, they were hard to use. We created green bar, 133 character reports on the old style printers, and that was fun, but they were quickly taken over by some of the OLAP tools that arrived on the scene. Cognos, Business Objects, MicroStrategy, even Holos, which was a short-lived, fascinating project. But the OLAP set, the OLAP, MOLAP, ROLAP, HOLAP combination of tools took over the world for a while after the data warehouse craze got really big in the mid-90s. And fascinating tools, a lot of them still alive to this day, but like everything else in tech, some of them failed to adapt and have fallen by the wayside. Holos did not last long. Fascinating tool. It would allow you to build a data cube and then edit the data on the fly. So you could do what-if analyses against dimensional data in the data set. It was absolutely fascinating technology. It was far too complex. It never had a prayer, unfortunately. After we saw those tools, obviously, there was a lot of the advanced statistical methods tools. SAS has been around forever. R, there's a bunch of the data mining tools that have been there. They've been pretty much surpassed by the next generation of visualization tools, ClickView, Tableau, all of these that are now moving more and more statistical functions into the tool set itself to allow you to market that you have self-serve analytics, right? So the people in this room, I think, know that you don't do self-service advanced analytics. That's sort of a contradiction in terms. But it's good marketing, and it sells a lot of tools. And I've had a number of CIOs and CFOs come up to me in my career and say, what I need is a Tableau report. And you patiently sit them down and say, okay, let's talk about what you want to be in that report, and then let's talk about how we get it to you. So a lot is going on here. Burst is another one of these. D3, open source libraries for visualizing data. Natural language processing, absolutely fascinating stuff we've looked at before. Allows you to take a data set and convert it into English. You can convert it into text on a page, you can convert it into spoken word. Fascinating stuff. that is being used in the financial services industry to create financial documents, is being used in the journalism world to take box scores from sports events and turn them into articles that you can't tell were not written by a human being. So really come a long way. There are some fascinating players in that space as well. The kinds of data that we're taking in certainly have changed dramatically over the years. We used to work with flat files, the ISAM files I was talking about, and other sorts of flat files. VSAM had its day, the IMS hierarchical databases, and the highly structured SQL databases. But that quickly became consumed by or diverted by the unstructured data revolution, which really coincided with the web coming up and there being so much data that we wanted to mine that was not structured data, that was not sitting in tables, columns, and rows. And that really has changed the way we look at data. Particularly social data is obviously that enormous rich mine of data that we all want to get after. Those of us who are trying to do sentiment analytics and marketing and sales analytics and those sorts of things, we cannot wait. We've been saying that for 5 years now. We cannot wait to do an effective job of getting at that social data. Obviously, there are a ton of issues surrounding that, privacy and permission being among the top of those. So still fighting those battles. Streaming data has been around for a long time, but really got to have some prominence during the big data boom that happened in the last 5 years or so. I was doing a project with a team at CSC 15 years ago where we were taking telemetry data from the Hubble Space Telescope, which at that time passed an unheard of terabyte of data a day down to an Earth base station, and we had to try to figure out what to do with it. So my team figured out a reduction algorithm that would basically weed out all the noise, all of the same, oop, difference, and turn that into an actual meaningful data stream that we could then produce reports off of and create visualizations on. So that sort of process is still going on today. You think about the IoT world and the coming boom of sensors, there's going to be an enormous volume of data coming at us. First thing we have to learn to do is how to reduce that to the salient data. Then we can start figuring out what we do with that data. And there's more to it than that, obviously, because the distance between salient data in a stream is meaningful in a lot of things, but there's a lot we can do with that. And streaming data is one absolutely fascinating area of analysis to me that I think, in being able to perform analytics on data in flight is an incredible concept. And finally, we talk about blockchain is the next latest wave, the cover of every magazine on earth right now, and one of the things anybody who's looked at blockchain knows is that you don't query a blockchain. That's going to change. That's going to get fixed. But we will figure out how to manage the data that is stored in blockchains as well, and how to incorporate that with all of these other sources of data into meaningful analysis. And finally, there's a lot of skills that go along with this. Certainly at the base, there are database administrators who are the hardworking day by day. We keep the database running, we keep the indexes working, we keep everything fine. Through the data modelers who, in the old days, in the SQL days, managed to model all of the data and make sure it was aligned correctly, make sure the syntax of the data was correct and everything related properly. And in these days, it's much less of a thought for a lot of the more recent developers, and I've had some conversations with a few friends in the room here about this process, but the need is still there for rigor with data and to model and architect data, and I think we're going to see a boomerang effect on this latest swell of blockchain interest to say, we can't just throw data at this thing, because if there's one thing a blockchain is not, it is highly scalable and can manage high volumes of data. So we're gonna find that those skills that we've gathered over the years will be valuable again, as is always the case in tech. Data quality management, data governance, those two frequently go together. Very, very important in every space, in every kind of application you can ever create, because if the quality of the data is suspect, your credibility is gone. and there's nothing you can do to get that back typically. So, those are old school skills, but they are incredibly valuable in this day and age. Master data management as well. I don't even hear those words anymore, and yet I spent 10 years of my career doing a lot of master data management, and it's just as needed now as it was back in the day. So we're going to see that come back. Data provenance is really gaining interest now. This is an interesting space, particularly in areas like healthcare and some other research-intensive fields where you need to know where data came from. How did you get your result? Where did you get your answers from? That's very difficult to tell these days, and there's a lot of really interesting research going on at universities and development going on at companies to try to automate how we capture and maintain the provenance of data and make it possible for us to prove the provenance of data and repeat results that we've gotten, because that's another problem that we see in the industry. Very difficult in a lot of cases to repeat an answer you got, and if you can't do that, you don't have much there. So that's kind of a quick saunter through some of the areas that I've been involved in. I think as I go through this and I look at these, I think it would be instructive just to kind of walk you through a few war stories here, some very exemplary spots. So, and I've been cautioned that I'm not allowed to mention client names here. So a very large United States agency dealing with nuclear materials, you figure it out if you can. I mean, you'll be clever. But I did a project for them 20 years ago in which they came to us and said, look, we manage the entire nuclear stockpile for the United States. Not only the energy side, but the weapons side as well. End to end, and we have facilities across this country, and they are in the most remote places imaginable in the US, and these facilities came into being starting in the late 40s. They've been there a long time. We don't know what condition they're in, and we don't know what condition the materials being managed in them are in. So can you create a system where we can assess the condition of our facilities and then figure out what we do to fix that? How do we remediate that? So we did what was at the time, and now looking back, an absolutely amazing system. We took the first pen-writable computer, which was a brick that I could barely hold in my hand, and you needed to be a weightlifter to keep it in your hand all day, that had an operating system called PenWrite Pro, where you could click and write with a pen. We created a system that condensed all kinds of architectural magazines and engineering magazines, catalogs and engineering catalogs of building systems, so that engineers and maintenance people around the US could walk into a building and assess the walls and assess the floor, the ceiling, the roof, the plumbing, the electricity. They could pull up what were the common defects that are commonly found in those. They could describe the coverage of that defect, and then using all of that, adding some more engineering tables to it, we could compute a remediation cost. So if we saw, on a 1 acre roof, if we saw a 1/4 acre of spalling on the asphalt on the roof, we could calculate what in current dollars it would take to fix that. Great system, fascinating, everybody loved it. We rolled it out nationwide. Everybody went out and collected the data, and these engineers were walking around with these pen computers, which I look back and I'm just in awe of this system. But they all brought it back together, and we finally got it all into our database and correlated and collated and cleaned up. And at headquarters, they went and pushed the button and looked at the number and said, can we do something else? Let's see, maybe we should try, we'll pick a little bit at a time. The number was so large that it scared the hell out of them and they quit. So I'm absolutely not kidding, that was the end of the program. So, don't ask the question if you can't handle the answer is the motto here. You should have some sense for what answer you might see at the end of a question before you ask it. Lawyers all know this trick. Another job I did for a southern US department store chain. It was a very upscale chain. Did a lot of fashion clothing. We were doing a merchandising system for them, merchandising analytics, sales and product movement, things like that, replenishment. And they had a particular item, a dress, that was the hottest seller across the chain, except in southern Texas. and they were having a really hard time figuring out why this item wasn't selling in Southern Texas. Sold out in all the other stores. And we ran all kinds of analytics, we created new algorithms, we tested various theories, until one day a merchandiser from one of the South Texas stores was in the building with us, and she walked into the room and we were asking her about it, and she said, oh, well that's because they're all purple down there. You sent us all purple. And we said, what's that have to do with it? Well, purple is the color of the dead in Mexico, and nobody wants to buy it. They pulled those off the shelves, replaced them with bright colors, they were gone in an instant. So sometimes the answer is right in front of your nose, and no amount of high-priced, fancy analytics is going to get it. You do need to use common sense in some of these cases. So that was a fascinating lesson to learn. Another instance, I was doing work for one of the world's largest insurance companies. They had just gotten a new CEO who was convinced that they needed to be a data-driven corporation. And to do that, he told all of his direct reports, we're a data-driven corporation starting tomorrow. They all went out and started hiring data scientists immediately. This company hired over 100 data scientists in a year in New York City alone. Sounds great, right? They didn't supply them with any data engineers to help them to gather data, prepare data, clean data, harmonize data. They didn't do any of that. They left these people to fend for themselves, and a year later that program was largely forgotten. So, you know, there really aren't any silver bullets. There's no just hire the right people and this will solve itself. You really have to think about the entire scope of the problem and how do we support this effort? How do we make sure that they can be successful? How do we plan for success with these people? So I was working for a New Jersey-based manufacturer of soup and goldfish crackers. You may know them, you may not. Over here, I don't know if they have goldfish crackers here. But they had just gone through a best-of-breed selection process for ERP software. And they had picked one of the vendors. And it very quickly became known quietly behind our hand as the worst-of-breed software selection process. They picked a completely unworthy platform to do this ERP on. But anyway, they stood up all their processes on it and got it running, and they brought it to its knees immediately. And there was an enormous panic throughout the organization. And the company I was with at the time, Computer Science Corporation, had what I still consider the finest collection of technologists I've ever met in something called the Performance Engineering Team. They sent their best guy, Andy Gallup, into this soup company to try to figure out what was wrong. And these guys were famous as the men who rode in on the white horse and saved the day. So Andy spent the morning talking to everybody and listening to IBM and Oracle point fingers at each other. It's your servers, no, it's your database, and all of that. All the things that always happen. It's nobody's fault here. But he listened to all this, and he came to lunch with I and a colleague of mine, and we're sitting at lunch eating soup and goldfish crackers. And he's got a green bar dump in front of him. He's got a data dump from an ABAM that happened that morning. And he's just casually flipping through it, and we're eating, and all of a sudden he says, found it. We said, what? He says, right there, there's the line. He said, there's the line for what? He said, that's their problem. He went back after lunch, they fixed one line of code, and the system sang after that. Stood up on its hind legs and sang and danced, and it was amazing. That guy is a legend at this company. We were out to dinner that evening, and the CEO had his arm around him at the dinner table. That's, you know, so in many cases, the devil is in the details. Sometimes it is the very smallest thing can absolutely bring anything to its knees. Just a couple more here, honest. A very large cola company in the United States that does not have two names. We're doing a global SAP role, and actually a global SAP instance consolidation. And they had a huge master data management problem. They across divisions and even within divisions, they had multiple names and item numbers for the same products. And so I was called in as a master data management guy while at IBM to speak to the CEO of this company, lovely Indian woman, can't mention her name, But it was a very humbling experience for me. I'd never been brought in to speak before a CEO before. The head of consulting, all consulting with IBM, was there with us. And now I'm really feeling small and sort of meaningless. The first thing, I'll tell you one anecdote first. The first thing she said to him was, "Where's Sam?" He said, "What?" She said, "Where's Sam? I'm the CEO of this corporation. I expect your CEO to be here." So suitably humbled, I'm up next, right? So, no stress at all, Bob. So I get about halfway through the deck, and she stops me, and she says, "I've heard enough. We're going to do this." And I'm thinking, this is great. She says, "Go to Chicago, tell this guy we're doing this, period." That's the end of the meeting. We all walked out, we're high-fiving and going out for a beer afterwards, and everything is good. We go to Chicago, we talk to this guy, he says, "I don't care what she said, we're not doing it." Your CEO told us we're doing, no, I don't care, doesn't matter. Have her come here and tell me that. So you cannot ever underestimate the inertia in organizations. You can't possibly have too much support for a project. Somebody can shoot down a project if they want to. This guy wanted to do it himself. He wanted to be a hero, and he decided that he was going to. By the way, he was out of the company 6 months later, but be that as it may. One more good one here. For a global bank, my company CSC again, got a call one day from one of the IT guys in New York who said, I want to pitch a project we have here, and I want to talk to you guys about coming in and doing an independent assessment of it. You guys saved my rear end when I was with Merrill Lynch a few years ago. You came in, our performance guys again, came in and bailed them out of a huge jam. So they said, we'd like you guys to take a look at this idea. Apparently, this global bank had a chief architecture office in Germany, but they had decided that all they needed at this bank was one database in the entire world. And they decided that using virtualization and trigger managed change data capture and pushing data to edges, that they could do everything. And I mean, these people had trading desks. They wanted to do it all out of a single database worldwide. So they brought us in to evaluate it. And I believe at one point the guy who brought us in called it the Mickey Mouse architecture, so you knew where he was on the subject. But we had to do a professional job, but the point I'm making here is, that was weird, but the more we got into it, the weirder it got. I mean, they had all kinds of grand schemes about how they would architect this, and we actually tried it. We actually stood all these tools up and proved that we couldn't do what they wanted to do on current technology, and we said, it may happen someday. But the great thing was we got experience using data virtualization, the change data capture technology. I was pushing that for years afterwards, and it was very, very successful in other situations, in the right situation. By the way, we eventually got this company to say, why don't we start with reference data alone, which is a big enough problem for a bank, as Susan can well attest, but reference data by itself changes at lightning speed throughout the day for every bank. And just to do that was very challenging, but it was a huge success for them. So, there's always something you can learn from this, but, whenever you think you know just how weird technology is, it can always get weirder. Just look at blockchain. I mean, everything has changed. The last one I'll do here is just a little bit for fun. I was working for a food manufacturer out of Chicago, and they have a subsidiary. I don't know if anyone here knows the brand Oscar Mayer. Or the Oscar Mayer jingle, which I'm not going to sing a song here, folks, but it basically says, my baloney has a first name, it's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name, it's M-A-Y-E-R. We were doing a project for them. I had one of my team up presenting the program plan and all the assignments and everything. He misspelled Meyer. He spelled it M-E-Y-E-R. The head of marketing for Oscar Mayer is sitting next to me at the table. I noticed it. I said, keep your mouth shut, let's hope it goes by. She didn't miss it. At the end of his presentation, she raises her hand and says, I want to commend you, that was a great presentation, we understand what you're doing, we think the arrangement is great, and we love your ideas for how we can organize the team. And by the way, my baloney has a second name, it's M-A-Y-E-R. And there's the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. I did get to see it. I wasn't allowed to drive it, unfortunately, but it's a real thing. I'm close to the end, honestly. So it honestly, you know, really has been a very long, strange trip, as I keep characterizing it. And what I'd like to do is just finish with some distilled thoughts that I have, some sort of consultant truisms, if you will, but they are very true truisms that I'd like to leave you with. And we've broken them into two categories: lessons from business and lessons from technology. And the first and foremost and absolute and utter forever lesson on the business side is, it's the business, stupid. Never, ever, ever forget that the first most important thing you're doing is solving a business problem. Whatever you are doing, you are there to solve a business problem. The moment you lose sight of that and get enamored of the tech for its own sake, trust me, you're going down a bad path, and you will be proven wrong in these cases most often. It is the business, stupid, particularly in the analytics space. Analytics, data warehousing, BI, reporting, whatever you want to call it. There has to be a business motive behind this. There has to be a business driver for it, a defined business driver for it, so that somebody wants this data. Going right along with that, one of my rules of thumb has always been, if you haven't improved the process, you've failed. I think everything that I produce for a company needs to be consumed within a business process. That's why I'm there. If what I produce doesn't improve that business process, streamline it, make it more efficient, make it more effective, make it possible to do with less of other data, then I haven't done what I'm supposed to do here. So we should always be focused on understanding the process that's going to use the data we're producing and figuring out how we produce that data in such a way that we can change that process. If we're out there causing business change, we're doing our job. Beware of geeks bearing gifts. This one is obvious, but you know, I told you before about the CIO who came to me, or the CFO I think it was, who came to me and said, I just need a Tableau report. Well, why do you need Tableau? Well, I've seen it on that guy's desk and it really looks great. Okay, let's calm down. And you know, so technology gets ahead of itself, and it always gets ahead of itself. And by the way, all of these guys read all the same magazines we see. So back in the day, I called it CIO magazine disease, where the latest thing that was on the cover of CIO magazine was the thing I had to know about the next morning at the client office, because they were sure as hell going to ask me all about it and say, how are we going to do this? How can I take advantage of this? So, you know, understand that tools have a purpose, but the content inside them, this goes right back to, it's the business. The content that you serve up with those tools is far, far more important with the tools. I can produce an Excel spreadsheet for a chief marketing officer that can, in many ways, do more for him than ClickView or SAS or anything can ever do if the content is better. So bear in mind. And this one's just so obvious it almost bears not saying, but don't miss the forest for the trees. The example I gave with the dresses at Dillard's, the department store, that's an example of this, right? Don't get so enamored of the data you're working with that its importance is bigger than the overall picture. For this project I was doing for the energy agency, we had very proudly produced a whole series of great financial reports that we were going to show at the end. And we went to see our stakeholder, we flashed him up on the screen, and he said, I love this, you've got all the right information. By the way, I don't think you need to have cents on that total line. You know, we're looking at billions of dollars, you know. I think your precision might be a little off there. So just, you know, we could maybe stay at millions for this. So, you know, really, don't miss the forest for the trees. It's the most important thing. From the technology side, throughout your whole career, be open to change. I've been a career data guy, never involved in a startup. I've been in huge companies all my life. A year and a half, 2 years ago, I took a very long step off a very steep pier into startup land. And better yet, blockchain AI startup land, data analytics startup land. Be open to change. The things you know are valuable in ways you don't think of them as. If you've got experience doing a lot of things around data, everything you've learned is going to be valuable to somebody. And they're going to be valuable in ways you don't think of today. So all of the skills you've learned to assemble data for preparation to produce analytics, I know probably a lot of you saw Yuri Alexandrov give a presentation here a couple of months ago about DevOps and analytics and the things you need to do to prepare data and all the hard work that goes on behind the scenes to prepare data. Those kind of skills are incredibly important in every situation. And in particular, for those of you who are working in startups, that kind of experience can save the life of a startup, because a lot of startups are constantly looking for what corners to cut. When you're talking about data, please, dear God, try not to let them cut corners, because that will be the death of a company. Question everything. Don't accept whatever you are told on face value just because it came from the highest paid person in the room, or a guy with a great reputation, or a woman who's been doing this for 30 years. Question absolutely everything. That's your job. And particularly in the analytics space, it is always your job to question everything. And question the source of the data, question the provenance, question the analytics, the algorithms, question everything, how it's presented. Always question everything you see. And I talked about the weird ideas thing. That can take you a long way and in surprising ways. So, never look down your nose at weird ideas, because there's something interesting in there. We hear, doing work in the blockchain space right now as we are, trust me, we hear a lot of weird ideas. But there's always something in there to pay attention to. There's always something you can learn from everybody you talk about in this space. And Mike will tell you, there's a lot of off-the-wall ideas out there, but there's a lot of great ones as well. So keep listening, folks. And I kind of went over this one on the be open to change thing, but keep your skills current, learn the newest thing, but do not leave old skills behind, because those old skills are always the foundation on which the new skills will be made better. So do not lose that mentality. Remember what you knew back when. It's going to save your life. The last point here is really a couple of points, and this is just my own personal mantra, is that the plumbing matters more than the paint and the pillows. When the plumbing fails and the house floods, goodbye paint and pillows, right? So the point here is that all of the hard work, all of the plumbing, all of the wiring, everything you have to do to get ready to produce a result is every bit as important as the result itself. And in a way, it's more important because it allows you to produce result after result after result. So my last statement, it's all plumbing. I mean, that's really the truth, is we have to treat everything as plumbing. We have to revere everything we do, and we have to remember that we can always learn from this, and we're going to take all of this forward with us. So that's a long, strange trip, folks, but there you go. That's it.
Thank you very much, Bob. I think we've possibly got time for maybe one or two questions before our next.
I bet I ran over, huh?
Any questions for Bob?
I'm exhausted.
Nobody?
Yeah.
Oh, one there. Nobody?
Thanks for the talk. That was great. Did I get this right about now? You're now thinking about the health space.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, in the breadth of your experience, about business banking, everything, what are you there? What do you see there that's sparking your interest?
That's a wonderful question, and Susan and I get this question all the time. I've been in big consulting for 30 plus years. It's a grind, it's exciting, it changes all the time, but it doesn't really do much for your soul. And at this point in our careers, we decided to do something that we could go to bed being proud we'd done during the day and wake up looking forward to doing it again the next day. That's the biggest single reason. We saw a problem in the healthcare space that we think we can help fix based on some of our own experience in our past lives. Ooh, don't forget what you learned. We're using a lot of that and trying to improve some processes around medical device management. So, hopefully, the best possible outcome, we do something that improves that process and maybe even helps or saves some lives along the way. But, it's just wonderful knowing that we're doing something for a cause like that rather than a cause to sell more dresses in Texas, honestly. Yes?
Thank you. not switching technologies every year, or you know.
Well, I think what you're doing is going to dictate a lot of that, because you're going to find, you know, all of us who are here in IT, I'm going to just make a very broad generalization, and of course all generalizations are wrong, but are all interested in what's going on in tech. So we tend to keep up, and we tend to at least be aware of what's changing. In the area that you're working in the area of your specialty, you'll be particularly acutely aware of what's changing, and you'll probably want to play with that on your own, or you'll get opportunities at clients where you may be able to say, you know, we're using this today, and we use it because we've got it, and it's how we know how to do it. But if you've experimented or played with something, or understood something on your own time, you know, suggest to somebody, you know, why don't we look at this? I mean, here's what's great about it. Here's what might be better about it. What do we have to lose? You know, let's do a quick pilot or something. But that's one way to get at this. Another is this. So coming here and experiencing this meetup community in Scotland has been a revelation to me. The meetup community obviously is huge in the United States, but it's not attended like this anywhere I've been. And I've been to blockchain meetups in New York City that had 20 people in them. And that, to me, is crazy. So there's incredible enthusiasm here. You can exchange a lot of information. A lot of things get presented by people, unlike me, who actually do things and actually work with the technology these days. So I would keep track of that. You know, I would continue to go to the meetups, but every chance you get on the job you've got to try to bring some new skill in, or some new capability that seems like it might fit, I would take advantage of it, every chance you get.
Isn't that experimenting on your customer then?
You have to get the customer to agree. Yeah, it is. But obviously the benefit is huge to the customer, particularly for the early adopters. So when I talked about the agile data integration, a tool called LavaStorm, I found out about it because a friend of mine was in the company, and I started learning about it, and I was working for the big global insurance company at the time, and I was able to bring them in and demonstrate it, and they loved what they saw. We did a prototype where we could do something in an hour that had taken them a week previous to that, and that was an immediate benefit. So, you know, you look for those kinds of opportunities to bring things in. And if worst comes to worst, these days, you change jobs, you find somebody who wants that skill. You know? Well, I'm sorry. Subversive.
Any more questions? No?
Cool. Thank you.
So next up we have Eddie and Yuri. And while they're getting their stuff ready, just want to kind of make an announcement. I don't know if you guys noticed, but this week the Scotland Data Science and Meetup group passed 2,000 members. So we've got 2,000 people, 2,000 members, by a large distance, awesome. The largest meetup group of its kind in Scotland, and probably pushing UK numbers now. Yeah, so very well done to everybody who's been a part of this, because we're definitely heading in the right direction. So as I mentioned, next up we have Eddie and Yuri, and work for Seaforth Analytics.
Yeah.
Yuri's moral support.
Yeah.
So first of all, age is catching up with me, so I need to use my glasses so that I can see close up, but I can see that screen there, no problem, which you can. So first of all, Bob has said a lot of things there, and I almost feel like tearing up my script because a lot of that was very similar to his, and I just tore his up by accident, so sorry about that.
I know it by heart.
So, my name is Eddie McGeechy. I'm the co-founder of a startup company Yuri and I set up 2 years ago. Seem a bit old for a startup company, but let me take you through our journey a little bit and then tell you some of the stuff that we've done. So we're in our 50s now. We've worked for large corporations. A lot of stuff that Bob said there, we shared the same corporation that we worked for a long time. One of the biggest global computer companies in the world. You can check that out. I know I'm not allowed to say, but it's 3 letters. Anyway, so we worked for them for a long time. In global supply chain. So my background is in supply chain. Yuri's is in basically data, but I'm a data guy as well. And what I'd like to do is take you through a bit about our history, how we got here. Because years ago when I was doing an MBA at Strathclyde Uni, what they said is, if you're in the same job just now, you won't be in 5 years' time. And you think, what are they on about? We've been made redundant twice in the last 5 years and decided that's it. Worked for a big global IT provider for nearly 20 years, then worked for another company who gave us some insight. And I'll take you through some of that journey and then show you how we put analytics today into practice. So you need to excuse me while I put my specs on. So one of the things that Craig was talking about was getting kids into coding. And I'm trying to think about how did I get into coding years ago. And a lot of the stuff that Bob said there really echoed with me because I'm looking at Yuri. He challenges everything every day. Challenges data source, challenges everything. But what we have done is, when I was a kid, I was about 14 or 15, back in the day when PCs were just coming out, they weren't invented really, but they were just getting there. A computer would cost you a lot of money. And then they had the home PCs. And I used to go into Argyle Street in Glasgow. Sorry, I'm from Glasgow. Those that don't understand my accent, I'm from Glasgow. And basically they had a place called John Menzies, where you as a kid could sit in, and they had this large thing and you could key in code and you could write code. Really obscenities with your pal and watch it flicker around about 5 or 6 times because everybody does it when they learn code. So that was some of the stuff that we'd done originally. But one of the things that we spoke about was data integrity, and one source of the truth. And I remember as a kid, my dad said to me, you need to try the fixed odds coupon, son. So I was 14 or 15, so I wasn't old enough to go betting. So he explained to me what it was. But at that time I went and got my first PC. But my dad had to go guarantor, so none of this credit rating nonsense today or anything like that. So I had to go, he had to pay for it, I paid him back. I had a milk round, I paid him back from that. So I got this code, and like most people, they're looking for an application when you get a bit of tech. What can I do with it? How can I move it forward? And so he explained to me about fixed odds betting, how it works. And I wrote a program. So I put my first line on, and it came up. For those of you who don't know what fixed odds is, it's a betting technique where the odds are calculated at the start, and you can take a permutation. So for maths guys, permutation or combination, work it all out. So I gave my dad the money. Lo and behold, the whole 7 came up. And I thought, your beauty. I've calculated it, worked it out. My dad comes back and goes, there's your winning, son. There's your £5. I'm like, £5? Where's the other 50? And he's going, what? I says, I used the computer to calculate, and that learned me a valuable lesson about trust and also data integrity. So what that allowed me then to do is say, one, it was one of those pivotal moments where your dad looks at you and goes, I can't kid him on anymore. But that was one of the first journeys of how data sort of underpinned everything that I was working on. We've worked for some multinationals in the last 4 or 5 years, some big household names. But I think one of the key things that we've been looking at is how can we have one source of the truth? How can you work on data? How can you bring it together? And how can you bring that to customers? And I think one of the things Bob said there, which I've got in here, is don't create something for the sake of creating it. An old boss of mine, who's American as well, said just because you have a hammer doesn't make everything a nail. And I think that resonates as well, because if you get software and hardware, you need to have a business need. The other thing you need to do when you're speaking to stakeholders, when you're a techie guy, be engaging with them. Show them you're passionate about it, because most of them just don't get it. They really don't get it, and they're investing a lot in you as a person. They want to see a return. So that's where we work every day. We challenge everything that we're doing to say, does that meet technically challenging stuff, and does it also meet the brief that we've been given? And I think that's one of the lessons that we can have in this. One of the things that Bob had spoken about was take small ideas somebody said there, how do you bring new ideas on? When we worked at the big company, we set up a supply chain centre of excellence for analytics. We'd done some fantastic work. One idea we had came from optimising pallets. That idea went on to deliver $15 million worth of savings from one thing, and it was all underpinned with technology and algorithms using optimisation software, which we didn't know at the time. And then we were asked to head up a Centre of Excellence for Global Supply Chain with a turnover of 45 billion in the supply chain. So moving stuff by sea, by air, 3,000 people in the supply chain, how do you forecast how many staff you need? Excellent point that Bob spoke about. Senior Vice President says, this is what we're going to do. You go and speak to the Vice Presidents and they say, there's no way I'm doing that. You just said you were, no, I never. So it's harsh lessons in stakeholder management. But I think one of the things that we sort of looked at is don't be afraid to go on fishing trips. Don't. Whether you're doing it as part of your day job or you get bored looking at Google during lunch break or something like that, do it because the benefits that will bring, for one, for you as a person, and two, for the company, is massive. So don't give up going on fishing trips. In fact, we were actively encouraged and given a band range to really 30% of our time should be on fishing trips. We helped the company as well present at Gartner Global Supply Chain in Chicago. Guest speaker there was the Manned Mission Space Director, a guy called Ian Hill. We actually met him, I actually got him drunk, but he was an extraordinary man. He was a guy that basically ran the space program for getting it in the air, and when it was in the air, and he told us about data, the importance of it. He gave us 2 books to go and read. It was fantastic learning. He also showed a graph that showed no scale, no access, just showed you this trend. And he said if this was a business, what would it mean? It said it's gone from loss into profit. And then he took it back and he says this is global warming. There is not such a thing. And the thing we should be really worried about is when the next big freeze is coming, because it's 1,000 years overdue. So this is what the guy from NASA was telling us, which was really mind-blowing at the time. And I think one of the key things at that summit was Lenovo used analytics to drive its ranking up. It went from 45 down into 21, top global supply chain. Analytics really underpinned a lot of that. And that was a lot of the stuff that we were doing. We built the case and our bosses presented it. They gave us the leeway. It's a fantastic opportunity for us. And then we decided to set up self. And this is what we've done. The other thing is dealing with executives or stakeholders. Sometimes you can lose them as soon as you open your mouth. It's just a fact. And I think one of the keys here is how do you learn the soft skills? Because most people here are technical people and they really need to know the soft skills and how to deal with clients. So Yuri and I work really well. Find yourself someone that can explain to an exec in 2 sentences what it is you're doing, because there's no way that you will. I don't mean to be disparaging, because the technology, the detail that you go into just takes you down that path and you have to sort of unburden yourself. And I think one of the things that you need to look at is how can you keep it simple and focus on the soft skills as well, because they're just as important to get the funding, to get the kudos, or to get the stakeholder engagement. We also work for Silicon Glen down in Greenock. Biggest IT company in the world, had one of the biggest IT failures for a long time in our fulfillment area. There was no guy you could parachute in, and it was hard work. It took about 12 weeks. The backlog went through the roof. I went to China, transferred loads of work to China, so my background's in operations, supply chain, procurement, data. This is how we then sort of got to where we are. So let me take you through what it is about ourselves. we're based in Glasgow. We've been doing this for 2 years. Somebody said to us, we haven't heard of you guys. We thought, yeah, you haven't heard this because for the last 2 years we've been non-stop working all over the place. And what we're trying to do is build the strategy up and knowledge and the base to grow our company. There's sort of 4 people working for us just now, or we're part of a 4-man team, working for some big players doing different things, but all underpinned by data. We want to be the best procurement supply chain analytics company in Scotland. This is a particular niche. There's not many people doing it, and the big players are doing it, charge that much money that it becomes very prohibitive for small to medium businesses to do it. So we work in procurement with category managers. So a lot of people are saying sales, medical, all these types of things, but supply chain is generally at the back of the queue when it comes to IT. And I think one of the things that they talk about there is man years. So IT guys think they're doing a project maybe in 2 years, whereas the community might think it's 10 man years. If I put in a change request, it's going to take me. They don't understand the technical aspects of it. But what we wanted to show was the story of a category manager, where the person is on the hook to deliver savings. He doesn't know code. The technology is old. So most people think Excel. Excel is a fantastic tool and it's one of the best in the market. But one of the problems we have is big companies haven't invested in the infrastructure, Office 365, these types of tools. So a lot of enterprises are running off Windows 2007 and they don't have any of this capability. Not only that, category managers are really impatient people. They want the stuff yesterday. Going back to what Bob said earlier, taking data, blending it from multiple sources, multiple ERP systems, currency, exchange rate, all the stuff that should be come from the system isn't. But it probably is there, but they just haven't figured out how to do it. So, from a category point of view, or a real life view from procurement, time pressures are really important. Those guys have got KPIs and targets that they need to meet. And without sort of sustainable one source of the truth data, then they can't really do it. They don't have the skills, the technology skills. They're good at negotiating with people and they're good at creating deals, but they're not good at getting the data to present to them, and that's where we come in. We help them take basically sewage and make it into drinking water. That's a good analogy because that's what a lot of people have said to us in the past. But I like this one that Winston Churchill said, I only believe in statistics that I doctored myself. And I think that's very obvious from some of the people that we have to deal with, because you have to get over that trust barrier, and if you get, it takes you a long time to regain any trust if the rigour isn't in the data or in the process. So we see it as sort of 3 areas for procurement driven transformation, which is people, process and technology. And how we sort of work with that is we take all these different data feeds. We actually use a tool that isn't up there, and I'll come to that in a minute. And I'll show you, we can maybe show you that. But we use, most people look at what they call descriptive statistics, i.e. what have I done? They haven't looked at predictive. Tableau has features in it that will give you some algorithms for working out trends and demands and stuff like that. But you have to have a good knowledge of stats to do that anyway. We've done a project before, the most interesting project I've ever worked on in my life, consumed half of my soul, and it went from being a fantastic leading edge solution down to something that we deemed to be an inventory optimization tool, and it got lost in its complexity. It was brilliant, but it was too complicated for the business, and that was a real lesson that we had lots of insights from it. It was all about predicting probability and using probability in the supply chain, but most people in the supply chain don't know statistics. So anyway, But interesting, Michael Porter, who any of you have done anything to do with business, famous business guy from the US, basically what he's saying is data is a real strategic tool that needs to be harnessed. And I think one of the things, he's the guy who done the 5 forces model, all the stuff you learn at business school, he's the guy who done that. And I think when people like that are saying, what is the value in my data? We're struggling with that today. So how much do we charge? How much are people willing to pay? You know, how much are people willing to invest in data scientists? Show me what I'm getting for my money. You know, most people have got big data, but they don't know even how to use small data. And it's to create that sort of momentum and give them a hook that you can then say, not only can we deliver a solution, but real business value that you guys can make informed decisions on. And we've been doing that from the Centre of Excellence days, and that sort of stayed with us all the way through. I won't go through all of this stuff, but it's just to give you an idea of the process that we went through in some today even. But you know, the problem recognition, how do you build the business case? You know, when people are looking for things to solve, they don't magic them up. There's a need, a business need to do it. It's not a folly. People need to see a return. It needs to solve a business problem. And we used analytics a lot to really get a case forward. We stopped a business case being done on the basis of counter argument that we gave when we showed them the real facts rather than averages. Because most people don't have the time, they use averages, and then that then creates a business case. And when we used distributed data, it became so obvious that there wasn't a business case there to do it. What we do is slightly different. We've been looking at text. So in the last 2 years, we've been fighting every single day on how we analyse data from text. So sentiment analysis, how do we then say what people are buying, consolidate that. Generally speaking, ERP systems are wrong, miscoded, you've got stuff in the wrong buckets, and they don't make sense. So a lot of you people in here, if you enterprise resource planning tool, like MRP, old-fashioned type, ordering tools, SAP, Oracle, all of these things, the data in them is enormous, but generally speaking there's a lot of errors in them. Category managers and procurement professionals can't really use them. The other thing is most people don't have a knowledge of how accounts payable works. So you've got purchase orders and then accounts payable and try to combine the two. So for most people who are not in that sector, finance are one of your major stakeholders because you need to convince them. And I think one of the routes that we have in this process is, how do we analyse text? How do we tell what it is from the text? We've developed a tool that's nearly there to help us analyse free text using natural language programming. We're not programmers, never have been, never admit to it either, apart from early days in John Menzies when I coded stuff looking around a loop. But I think the key for us here is, how do you take the skills that you guys have in this room and then convert it into solutions that will drive real change in business? And if you want to accelerate your career, think about things that add value and where you can show that if I do this, this is the value that this will deliver, rather than it's a nice to have project I want to do it because I read something interesting on it. Go and figure out how I can make a business case for this. Take it to your bosses and say, here's something that I think will deliver a saving for you. But you need to assess the risk of doing that as well, because a lot of people that we've found to our detriment are career warriors, and they're very much surrounded about themselves in terms of career and very much think about that. Most techie guys don't, because they're more interested in the technology, whereas you've got professional career-minded individuals that no matter where you are, you have to navigate around them. So that's one of the things that we've looked at. We're using a lot of software. using advanced text analytics that we'd done some machine learning a couple of years ago, got us sort of hooked into that a little bit. But how can we use that in unseen data? How can we then use that to quickly classify? So you classify something, you tell what it is, but then you say, you've got 11,000 suppliers, how do I bring that down to 1,000? How do I get cost savings? So all of these things drive real practical value. So some of the technology platforms that we use, you see Gartner quadrant up here, and I've highlighted a couple in here which is called visionary and leaders, and there's 3 or 4 up in that top right hand corner that we use every single day in life. We use an ETL tool called Alteryx. If you haven't seen it, go see it, it's amazing. It's like Talend, but a fraction of the price and more robust and scalable. I think some of the other stuff that we've used is Microsoft Power BI. Their stuff is just incredible, and the amount of iterations that they're issuing every week or every month, really. We've been early adopter Tableau users, advanced Tableau users. I was going to show a demo of something in Tableau, but we need to switch the camera off because I don't want it going on the web for obvious reasons. But one of the things that we've been able to do is use real cutting edge technology to put on people's desktops that they can consume it without any mass of IT help. There's a lot of issues around data and data security, but to be honest, the advanced text that we're using is underpinned by all the knowledge that we have gained in the last 20 odd years. And what we have done is we actually invoice we analyse millions of rows of data. We then sort of use natural language processing. English language is very strange. Yuri is Russian, tells me English is so screwed up it's unbelievable because it has multiple meanings for the same thing, or the same thing has multiple meanings. So there's an example. Yeah. And I think one of the keys there is, how do you then strip that out? Our algorithm runs through text and uses a value algorithm to tell you how much something is worth, therefore that's an important word, and then we go through a process of cleansing that. But we've sort of stumbled upon a very niche and growing market because big companies do not know how to do this. They don't. You guys in the room probably do. If we sat down and told you, it's like something Bob said, we worked with data scientists, Java programmers, HTML programmers, C# guys, and said, we can do all of this. You go, yes you can, but you don't have the idea. And I think one of the things, give you a bit of personal information from me. Years ago on a management development course, when I went to the dark side and I was in management for a long time, and as part of that thing you have to do this thing called Belbin's theory of teams. I don't know if any of you have done it, but mine's came up as a plant and everybody laughed at me. I was the only person in the room that came up as a plant, and the guy said, your business will not flourish without him because he's the guy who gives you the ideas. And this was something I went, what the hell is this? And then I realised that no matter how daft your ideas are, try it. We had PhDs working for us, and we said, going to do that? And he said, no, it doesn't make logical sense. And we go, but I'm an engineer, going to try it? No. Yuri agreed with him, says, it doesn't make sense. So, what we're able to do, this is a screenshot of Tableau. We're advanced users in Tableau, but what that allows us to do is quickly take data that we can sell a product, or not just sell the product, but also help the end user solve their problem, which is more important. One of the things Bob says, you love to get up in the morning and do this. I absolutely love this. Love it. Every day. People say working for yourself doesn't have its issues. It does have its issues. But what it does do is it means that I don't think you can suit yourself, but what it allows you to do is to think about what you want to do. And it took me 49 years to get to this stage, or 50 years to get to this stage, where you realise the knowledge that you have is worth something to somebody. And that's testament to what we are doing today. I'll just skip through this. But the point we're trying to make here is we can get to the what really fast. So most people say, who am I buying it from? How much am I paying for it? But really what you understand is what is it I'm buying? So we were able to do some analytics on that with minimal effort from IT. Because most companies, when you go into IT, guys get really twitchy and nervous what you're doing with our data. Well, this guy signed it off, the CFO signed it off, so we want to use it. And you go through the security aspects, you get all of that signed off, and then you build something, and then you give it to the client, and that's when the magic happens. That's when they turn to you and say, stop there, going to go back there, why are we doing that? And then that's you sort of saying, we've done what we were asked to do, because we're giving them insight. And the next stage that we're looking at is how do you do price parity? How do you look at services that are the same? Are you getting value for money? Bit of techie stuff here, bit of flowchart, but basically we're using an engine to calculate, or to, Bob spoke about MDM. We worked with and working with some of the biggest industrials in the business. They had and have a problem with master data, where if they can't find something in the storeroom, somebody goes and creates a new part number, and then somebody can't find that and they create another new part number, and lo and behold, they've got a whole bunch of stuff in their inventory that they haven't used in years, and wondering why they've got an excess and obsolescence problem. So what we've done is create a piece of code that maps against supervised known things. We run our keyword analyzer to it, and where the codes match, we then compare and say that's a candidate for a part number, something like that. And then you can see some of the examples, which we'll gloss over, and some real live examples of some interactions that this time we never done in Turbo, we've done in Power BI. So I am finished here. What I'd like to do is, this is the only sell that you get from me. Go to our LinkedIn, either follow us or like us, because we're trying to grow our network up. And also we have if any of you is prepared data or understand data, Yuri, although he's not said much, in fact he's not said anything, is probably the best data scientist that there is, and probably modest and understated. And I think he will always think there are people better than him. But I think the key here is everything that Bob said there, Yuri agreed to, which makes sense. And I think the other thing is, years ago when we worked at Big Blue, they had a backlog report. Yuri was the guy that took it from, shall I say, Lotus 123, because IBM had that, and transitioned it over to Excel, and that was a complete revelation, because people could then do all that stuff, drill down, things that you take for granted today. So, I'm finished.